We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. At the November board meeting, we discussed this meeting and decided to have it. All the board members, or many of the board members, wanted to be here tonight. So one of the things with having a quorum of board members, we do have to call this a regular board meeting. So there's going to be some quick housekeeping stuff right at the beginning. So we'll call the meeting to order, and Patrick, if you want to call the roll real quick.
Good.
Yes.
Heidi.
Yes.
Nugent. Young. Zimmerman.
Yes.
Lambert. Here. Ellison.
All right, the purpose of tonight's meeting, just to give you some background information, is the board has hired Fanning and Howie to come in and do a master facilities plan. And what a master facilities plan is, it's kind of a living document that puts all of the facilities state of affairs in order, such as repairs, things that need to be replaced. It's all based on inspections and industry standards. And then plus we had a facilities planning committee, and that planning committee was made up of students, teachers, community members, board members, former board members, and administrators. And they were asked for ideas and visions on where they thought the school district should be going. So Fanning and Howie's put a presentation together tonight about the things that we feel the school needs now and in the future. And we would like to get your feedback. The board, before we make any formal decisions, we'd like to hear from the community on how they feel about all the things we're going to present to you tonight. So with that being said, thanks again for coming tonight, and we'll turn it over to Mrs. Goodman.
Have we go around. Thank you for coming. I think my voice will work this way. Appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over pretty quickly to Fanny and Howie. Charlie and Carl are going to share the work that they did originally in terms of assessing our facilities, identifying what our needs are or what our strengths are in our facilities, and letting us know what in terms of what might be coming down the road or right away is an urgent need for our facilities. My hope is that you will ask questions, that you will share your thinking with us. We're going to do a little bit of voting in terms of, they're going to ask some questions to you tonight in terms of options and what do you think about different things, so that we can get your feedback. The one thing that I think is most important for all of us to keep in mind is that these buildings belong to all of us, to our community. It's one of our greatest assets as a community, and so we need you to help us determine what it is that we should do with our buildings. And so that's why we asked you here. If you have friends or neighbors that couldn't make it tonight, and if you share the conversation or what you may have learned this evening with them, and they have questions or concerns or would like some more information, I certainly hope that you will send them my way, and we can help to answer and clear up or any of that with them. So without any more time for me, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie so she can begin our presentation.
Charlie, just a second. One thing I forgot to mention was this is an open meeting, and we will at the end have public comments and questions, official public comments and questions. You'll be asked for feedback throughout the meeting, so it's a little bit informal. But if you would like to have any comments you have placed as a matter of public record, since it is an official meeting, at the end of the bleachers and on the table, there's some forms you can fill out, basically just for contact information and what you talked about. So those will be turned into Patrick so he can make sure he gets them in the minutes. And that's all it is, if you want it to be official record. Otherwise, you'll be able to speak without filling out those forms.
My name is Charlie John Sosa. I'm going to use the microphone because it's somehow every time there's a community engagement, I start to lose my voice. So tonight we're going to go through a little bit of background, just to make sure everybody's on the same page historically where we've been. In 2008, expenditures were 21%. I'm not going to read the chart, but you can see over the last few years, things have changed. Expenditures have not moved, but you've lost some of your state aid, some of that aid that you were getting. Also, there was a building, the new Prairie building was built in 1989, and you also had a closure of one of your elementary schools. I think this slide is very telling in terms of how much, based on the student enrollment that you had in '08 and the student enrollment you have today, how much you're spending per child. I think that's a relevant statistic and something you might not have been aware of. Again, as the board president mentioned, Fannie Howey was hired to do an assessment of the building. There were some main components that we were looking at. We did a physical assessment, and then we evaluated the learning environment. We also were helpful in assisting the district in looking at energy, but some of the energy data isn't completely back, so we're not going to share that tonight, but we ultimately will. And then we were charged with creating some options, and you'll be seeing those tonight. Okay, we'll get a little build up to that as well. The master plan looked at the physical bricks and mortars of the building, and then it also looked at physical spaces, if you had all the spaces you need to do the curriculum you're delivering. And then there was also a survey given to the community and the staff and students of the school district that you'll see reflected here as well. The board, we did a workshop with them to establish goals for the process. And this is what you're looking at here. Is they wanted to create a future-ready environment, a facility that was future-ready. Also an asset management, as Pat mentioned, as Ms. Goodwin mentioned, these are your assets. These buildings are the communities, and we want to make them well maintained. And so we want to provide good tools to manage those. Also resource management, and the nuance between those two are how you use the money you're spending, and that you're using it the most effective and the best long-term solution. And then effective utilization, and you'll see how that comes into play as your facilities have declined in enrollment. Also, Ms. Goodwin and the board really wanted everybody to think big. I mean, this is the school district's, Winthrop Harbor School District is a pride and a jewel up here on the lakeside that everybody wants to be like. And it's just a little nugget out there, a small community that values education, that we wanted to make sure we took advantage of it, big thinking. So we did a physical assessment. We started that assessment right about September, October. It was right after you guys got back into school. We looked at your roofs, we looked at your mechanical systems, and we looked at the finishes and the furnishings of all the classrooms. And we have a plan that's fairly lengthy about all these pieces and parts and when they would come due, both from a life cycle perspective. Like this flooring is in relatively good condition, but its life cycle may be beyond its useful life, and same with some mechanical equipment and roofs. We also did a demographic analysis where we took your historical data on demographics and projected it forward for the duration of the plan. And the master plan duration is a 10-year window, so we're looking at 10 years of time. And then we looked at the capacity, and the capacity is how many kids, where you put them in the buildings, how many children can actually fit. And then the alignment component, and there were, again, two parts to the curriculum alignment. There is the educational planner's view of the building. Do you have the spaces you need to do the curriculum you're providing for the number of children you're trying to educate? And then there was a survey that the community did as well. And the options is where we are now. We haven't gotten to that last item, the implementation plan. We're at the options, and that's where the board felt we needed some community feedback. Community feedback. Everybody's seen Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I'm not going to give out $1 million, I wish I could, but you're going to get to be the polled audience. So you'll have a clicker. And the next series of, and actually throughout the rest of the presentation, we'll be asking for some feedback. And so I'll wait till everybody gets a clicker, but essentially we'll be asking a few questions. You can press the ABCD 1, 2, 3, it's all 1, 2, 3 numbers. And you can press it, if you pressed it once and press it again, it'll only take the last
yeah, you ought to.
you did. So if you wanted to change your mind, you Maybe not. Okay? I want to make sure everybody's on this one. Nobody said you were going to take a test, did they?
I know, I do.
Okay, has everybody got one? This is the first question. It's a really tough one. Which one of these teams will be in the World Series next year? I don't know if you can see, but way up at the top, right there, those are we've got 16 respondents that have come in. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. 16? And you guys didn't get one?
No, not one.
You're not one, so 2 did both, so 22. Keep clicking. One seat 16. If you notice when you're clicking, there's a red light, just let us know when you're
Green light, it should be green.
Should be green.
If it turns red, let me know and I'll give you a different
17. Got one more. Well, you got a button that doesn't work.
one.
We're going to give it a few minutes. The first question, like I said, is the hardest. 19. 20.
This one.
That's not working.
Oh, this one's
Not
not.
working. Try that one.
Thank you.
Let's see if that one works.
That's it, we're over.
Maybe there's interference from the camera.
Still not coming. You ready?
Still not working?
Still not working. Go ahead, go ahead. Neither. So most of you believe that we don't have really good baseball this coming. I don't doubt that. The next question, again, some more questions, just get a point of everybody that's here. This one's a really tough one.
Let's try this one. 2.
Here we go, 21.
That's green.
A little bit more on the male side. Age range, hope they're big enough, but small enough we can get a good demographic. Unfortunately, there's a details to the age. Right? You had a good range there. And then your primary connection to the school district. If you're a parent, teacher, interested district resident, student, former student, business owner, or other. % parents, a lot of interested district residents. Thank you for coming. Which building might you most closely affiliated with? If you're a parent, you have one of both. The one that's closest to your house. The one whose traffic patterns every morning get you. Folks here that interested in this building. Nice. Okay, now these next series of questions is just kind of a warm up to get your perception of these buildings before we actually talk about the specifics. Westfield, how would you rate the physical condition? The physical condition, again, is that bricks and mortar, the finishes, the arrangements of the classroom. 30%. 35%, which is the highest number, folks think it's in good condition. It's in good condition. How about the learning environment? If you were, and you might not know specifically because you're not in the classrooms every day, but do you think you're providing a good education? So the learning environment must be in good shape. It must be great. Excellent, I guess is the word. Trouble didn't want to answer, don't know. Not sure. There we go. Good. Other folks think it's good. Large percentage don't really know what's going on. Good to know. Now we're going to go to North Prairie. How would you rate the physical conditions of North Prairie? The newer building, it is 15 years old, but it is definitely newer. Good. Again, most of them good, and actually you could take good and excellent, there's more than half. What about the learning environment of North Prairie? Very decisive group, you guys are flying. That's good. Again, we got more folks from Westfield, that makes sense. Here's the asset numbers that we had from our assessment. If you take Westfield, and the cost of replacement, what we need to know about that, that assumes the exact same materials and the exact same configuration and the exact same systems. So it's not an upgrade. So that would be replacing this building in kind with the similar materials. And you wouldn't do that, but that's the only way we can assess it. And then the current year, within the next year, there's a 1.6 million of work to be done. Over the life of our plan, there's 3.6 million. And the FCI, or the Facility Condition Index, is the percentage, this ratio between this value and the cost to replace. And the renewal index is this value between the replacement values. So you can see we're almost at 55% of the replacement cost in maintenance to this building. North Prairie is definitely in better condition. In the current year, there's only 460,000 in costs, and over the 10-year window, there's about 2.1 million in costs to be renewed. The major items at each building give you kind of a little breakdown. The HVAC system in this building obviously is dated, bathrooms, windows in the parking lot. At North Prairie, flooring, parking lots, the boilers, and also some roof repairs that have been identified over the last few years. On the learning environment front, and this is the assessment that was done by our education planners, okay? And it's based on a matrix of over 1 in 100. So these percentages are of 100. And the score is whether you have all the spaces in the right adjacencies for them in the matrix. And again, oops, let's go back. And again, North Prairie scores higher in good condition for this one. And that's not really surprising when you think you've taken some storage rooms to make a kitchen, you've taken some storage rooms to make offices, that you now you don't have any storage.
Charlie, can you speak to what types of questions were on the learning environment evaluation so you can get an idea generally for those that have
Yes, and we also see them again when we get to the likes and wonders of the types of things. For example, this room is also, this is the gymnasium, but it's also used as the cafeteria and a multi-purpose room. Well, without having that separation, there's a window of time during the day that kids aren't getting physical education because they're having lunch right here. So you don't have the opportunities, you're losing opportunities. Having small group instruction spaces, having large group instruction spaces, having variety of spaces, having, again, enough offices and secure entrance to the building, all of those types of things came into play for these questions. And all through various programs. special education programs? Do you have science, like North Prairie, do you have science labs? Do you have art rooms? Do you have all the amenities an art room would want, a kiln, those kind of things? Do you have water in the classrooms? Do you have enough bathrooms and things like that? Okay. This next one is what we refer to as the ACEs score. Fannie Howie did a pilot study last year, or over the last 2 years, where we surveyed principals at schools and asked them about the learning environment based on 5 indicators, whether it was the appropriate number of spaces, whether you had, whether it was on the high-end learning side, like you were a model classroom for other people, and whether you had good lighting, good air quality, so physical building conditions, curriculum conditions as well. And these are the ranges of the scores that we got. When school districts scored in the 250s, they were fair, and we could predict with fairly good certainties, high probability, that their ISET test scores would be in 51 to 58. So it's a predictor. If you give us, if we get enough feedback, and there was 157 individuals for Winthrop Harbor, district-wide, students and teachers that took the survey, okay? And we aggregated those scores and came up with these numbers. For Westfield, you have a 291, and for North Prairie, you have a 276. The thing to focus on here is that your predicted score would be 55 and 53, but your actual scores are much higher. So what does that mean? It means you're outperforming your buildings, that your buildings are in poor condition based on the scores, based on the test score, the ACEs score, but you're outperforming them. And that's not unusual when you take into consideration that the building matrix is only 18% of the total score. If you assume total score is 100%, 18% is affected by your building. So the thing to keep in mind is if you improved your buildings, those scores would predictably go up. And they also included, technology questions, access to technology, those things. So again, you're outperforming your buildings by 65 percentage points. What is your reaction after seeing all that information? You guys took some initial questions. Was that predictable? Is it better or worse than you expected? People still out. Still got 2 people that haven't quite voted. Move on.
Even though we're close to Chicago, it doesn't matter how many times you press those buttons. It only counts once, so press it again.
If you press it
just
again.
to make sure we get everybody's
Right.
input.
There we go. Just go down. Just go down. Just what you expected. 50% thought it was about what you expected. What about on the academic information? Again, was it better or worse about what you expected? Just what you expected. No, it's 74%. That's why they publish those scores. In the, as the board president mentioned, we had a workshop with community members and students. We came up with a list of I likes and I wonders. I like this about the building. I like that. And you can see the list here for Westfield. I like it's a neighborhood school. I like there's a lot of windows and that it's a bricks and mortar construction. Then there's a list of I wonders. And there's actually 2 slides of I wonders here. But the thing to keep in mind, you had asked earlier, Pat, what kind of questions came out. The ones in red are those that were indicated by the education planners of spaces that were either missing or deficient. And that's where you scored lower in those categories. Not having a separate gym and cafeteria, having noises that occur in classrooms downs that score, not having small group instruction settings, and the security of the entrance for the students that does affect that score. Common areas. There's a lot of things on that list. There's another slide here with more stuff. And then we did the same exercise for North Prairie as well. Obviously more items on there that were likes, things that worked very well over there. Neighborhood school. I think it's interesting. It was great when it was 6 of 8 building. It's still pretty good building when you got the 5th graders over there. And then there are wonders, things that they would like to think about. Rethinking the library, there's some programmatic, like the wood shop, programmatic pieces that you don't have the spaces for. Things that the teachers would like to have. So, if you had to guess how much the enrollment has dropped since 2004 to today, what would it be? Half? 40%? 10? 20%. The actual number is 30. It's about 30%. You're pretty close. A couple big numbers on each side of that 30%. This is, Carl, do you want to talk about the enrollment? These are demographics.
This is the enrollment. The blue line is the actual enrollment going back 10 or 11 years. And you can see how it's dropped down. It peaked in 2004, 2005 at 817 students. And it's been on a decline, unfortunately, ever since. But you got to remember that all communities go through that cycle. You know, where I live, when we moved in, we were like the first family that had little kids. It was all people my age that had empty nesters. Today, most of the empty nesters are gone. There's kids everywhere. And so when you look at this line going down, you can see it was pretty steep, but it started the last 3 or 4 years to flatten out. It's going to decrease slightly over the next 10 years. But you are at the bottom. And the community will start to see an increase again in enrollment. I wish my crystal ball were good enough to tell you where that peak would be, but it's going to be 20 years out before you're back up at a peak again. So it is a cyclical phenomenon that all communities go through, and you're just at a downward slide here, but it's starting to even out. And we're predicting that at the end of 10 years, you'll really be 480, 470 students, but that'll be the low point, and we'll start to increase again. Well, as long as I'm talking, I'll keep talking from there. Shouldn't let me say it. One of the things we also wanted to do is, as Charlie mentioned, the amount of space you have in your buildings versus the number of students. So we went through Westfield, went through North Prairie, we looked at the number of, the insider term is teaching stations, classrooms, essentially. And how many we have, what the capacity is. So at Westfield, we have a total of 16 teaching stations. That includes 2 special ed rooms. And the capacity is 343. We have 294 students currently enrolled. So the utilization is 85.7%, and that's pretty good. You don't want to be at 100%. You don't want to not be able to handle a class that has a few more students in it and be so crowded. You don't want to be too low either, because then you're supporting space that you're really not using. So 85.7 isn't too bad, but remember, we are projecting that it's going to go down over the next 10 years. When we talked about Charlie talked about the wonders and likes a minute ago. Somebody mentioned the fact that there were different areas in the building. This just shows graphically. We're here at the gym right in the center. For those of you who might not be familiar with the building, the way it's laid out, the red areas are the teaching spaces. The two green spaces are the special ed spaces. The yellow is some special resource, early learning program and special spaces we didn't count as, because they don't have regular classrooms in there. It's a little bit different at the middle school, and I'll try to explain why. Yes, you count the classrooms, but remember, at the middle school level, they also rotate classes. They go to the computer lab, they go down to the science room, to the art room. So we also have to count those spaces as part of the learning environment, as part of the capacity of the building. But it's very difficult to program those spaces at 100%, that every space is used every period. So the general rule of thumb is you use an 85% factor. So when you count up the number of spaces, and you get 430 is the total capacity, but in reality, the functional capacity, you just can't fill every space every period. It's 366, or 85% of the 430. The enrollment is currently 266 this year, so we're at 72.8% of capacity, and that is below 80%. We're starting to get a little low, and it's going to go lower over the next 10-year period. So we're starting to see that we're having spaces that aren't being fully utilized in North Prairie. This just summarizes for the district as a total. Total capacity of 709, enrollment of 76, an average of 79%. Capacity in 10 years stays the same, but the enrollment drops. So we're going to be down to 67.4% in the future. So in light of declining utilization, considering community values, just in general, is having two schools, how important is it? And this is your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer to this. But how important is it that there be two schools, since North Prairie was originally designed to be expanded to be one facility? So just
It wasn't designed to be one facility. It was designed to hold two separate schools.
true. That's that. If you didn't hear that, that is a good point. It wasn't designed to be one school. It was designed to be.
It was supposed to be split on the property.
Right, two schools with a common area joined, essentially.
That's what my question was going to be, is that it depends on what you're talking about as one school. If you're talking about one school, like it is now, or basically a campus with two different facilities.
Campus with two different facilities. But I guess what this question is asking is, do we need to continue to support two separate campuses with two separate facilities? And again, we just want to get a feel for how important that is. And we're going to show you some preliminary options. And we want to have this as background when we're considering the responses that you give us. So, anybody else want to sneak it up? People are thinking about it. I look away again and go with another
question. That was easy.
It is going on. So in general, over half people feel it's important, or somewhat or very important, to have two facilities.
The next few slides after these, the next two slides are based on the assumptions we use to build the options. Okay, there's a number of options. The first one is, to keep in mind, is level loading of maintenance. If you quick on your math and you added up the two figures on the first slide of $2 million over 10 years in North Prairie, and I think it was a little over three and a half here. So 5 million plus the 7 million, what was the final, I can't remember what it was. But it's more than the district has to spend. So if we level loaded it based on what they currently have been spending on maintenance, which is on average is about $105,000 annually. That doesn't mean every year they do that, but they'll, last year there was replacement of boilers, it was about 60, the year before that. So on average, they've been spending that much. So we took over the 10-year window and level loaded that type of maintenance, okay? It's less than the need, but it maintains the way you currently are running. Also,
Charlie, you might just take a second to explain how the assessment was done, just so you understand more of what Charlie was saying. When the assessors walked through the buildings, they looked at all of the building systems. The ceiling, the floor, the walls, everything, every building component was tied to a life cycle. Just like our homes, the roofs don't last forever. There's a certain number of years the roof will last, the boiler, etc. Some of the items, especially in this building, are past their useful life. That doesn't mean that they're going to fall over tomorrow, but they have reached the end of their useful life, and we felt important that the district, the residents, the board understand that at some point, some of those items are going to have to be replaced. They won't last indefinitely. So what Charlie is saying is that some of those items still have some life left in them, even though they've reached the end of their useful life. From a theoretical standpoint, you don't have to do those millions of dollars worth of repairs and improvements tomorrow to keep your buildings warm, safe, and dry. Some of that can be deferred for a while. So that's what Charlie's talking about level loading. In order to make it easier on the budget, easier on the taxpayers, would be to set some money aside every year to address maintenance items, understanding that some years you're going to have to, the board will have to address some additional items, and some years you might not have quite that big a need. But ultimately, those things get pushed off at some point. It's like Mr. Goodwrench. Pay me now, pay me later. At some point, those systems are going to fail, and you're going to need to, the community is going to have to face that.
the other item is the renovation levels, high, medium, light. They're pretty self-explanatory. Also, one of several of the options to talk about this building and not continue to utilize it, and we don't know what to do with it yet. I mean, you were fortunate in your last building to be able to sell it, so maybe that's an opportunity, but we don't know that. So we're just talking about what it would take to maintain it for a few years and then ultimately remove it. So the first option is status quo, just do what we need to do. And again, this assumes just that if you take the 105,000 multiplied by 10, that gives us this number right here. So that's where that figure comes from. Just, we're going to maintain what we've been doing and just continue to put money in that we can to maintain the facility. It is level cost. It's also the lowest cost. But it leaves significant maintenance issues unaddressed, and the learning environment isn't considered at all. I don't want to go too fast through these, but you'll get a chance to see them again. The next scenario is a new elementary school, would be to replace this building. It includes the 1.1 million, which is, again, is that level loading maintenance that we continue wanting to do. But then building a new building at 14 million. And if you might remember, we talked about the replacement cost for this building was 6.5. We build it differently with today's standards and today's materials and more efficient systems. New elementary school, fully address elementary needs, brings the 5th graders back to a Westfield campus. It is a higher cost, and it still leaves some significant maintenance issues unaddressed. Option 3 would be to do improvements to Westfield and a one-to-one computing at both schools. And the improvements would include just the additional entrance and gymnasium, or additional gymnasium and additional entrance, so it addresses security needs. Again, you see that 1.1. And then there's a significant addition here, but there's also infrastructure work for technology at both buildings and some equipment to bring one-to-one to both buildings. Again, it's minor improvements here because it simply just adds it replaces this room and adds a secure entrance to the building. But again, because of the level loading, there's some significant issues not addressed. And it doesn't take into account that if you imagine bringing the fifth graders back over here, then you have more space at the area. No, actually, that's the last one. They wouldn't bring fifth graders back in this moment. They'd stay over there. Oh, I'm sorry. We are not, in option 3, we're not bringing fifth graders back here. They're staying in fifth grade. It's only adding an addition to accommodate a gym and a new entrance, a secure entrance, and then doing the level loading maintenance and the technology upgrades. Option 4 is the change of grade configuration scenario. And you'll notice it's the same price as the do nothing scenario. And that's because as your declining enrollment occurs, more space becomes available and you can bring those fifth graders back at a certain point. That's really all it would do. It's just movement of kids back to over here because your enrollment has declined significantly that you could do that. It's exactly the same as status quo. The cons of this exactly the same. Option 5 is a total renovation of Westfield. One of the discussions that came out of our planning group was totally gutting this facility down to the bones, if you will, providing new HVAC, providing new configurations, and providing those additions we talked about as well, the additional gymnasium and additional secure entrance. So it's a full-blown renovation for this facility. Again, it would plan to bring fifth graders back. This one would bring fifth graders back. It would address the long-term needs of this facility because all of the equipment that was ended its useful life would be replacing. It is a high, significant cost, up to $13.5 total. Option 6 would be to close this facility and expand at North Prairie campus. And this is a limited expansion. No, this is the most expansion. This is a major expansion of the total to do expanding of the shared spaces, like the cafeteria would be expanded to accommodate more students because you'd be bringing them all over. So the shared spaces would be bigger, as well as additional classrooms for the students that are currently housed here. And this is limited expansion at North Prairie, which would be just to expand the classrooms, but not the shared spaces like the cafeteria and another gym. And so you not build additional shared spaces, the library, that you would just add classrooms. And that does shave off some funding, 7.9 over the life. The next slide is a summary of what we just talked about, based on the district goals that we established at the beginning. Future readiness, asset management, resource management, efficiency, utilization of the building, and thinking big. Option 6, which is closure of this facility and the total expansion at North Prairie to expand the shared spaces as well, is the one that gets full marks, followed right behind by the option 7, which is a limited expansion of the shared spaces, not any of the shared spaces, but a limited expansion for the academics. And then a total renovation here starts to get in there, but there's some missing components. Also, option 3 starts to fill in a lot of the blanks, as well as a new facility. The next slide's a question, so I want you to make sure you understand those options. In your opinion, which options represent the best alternative for Winthrop Harbor?
Before you answer, what questions do you have about any of the options?
One option stated an expansion at North Prairie. What does that involve?
Option 6, as Charlie said, would be an expansion in North Prairie. It would essentially be a school and a school with shared common facilities. So you'd have an elementary school with classrooms, office space. You'd have the middle school. You would share the cafeteria, which, as Charlie said, would be expanded.
I thought that's option
slightly.
7.
No,
Option 7 is just adding classrooms and not expanding any of the core facilities. It would be tight, you could do that, but it's less expensive. It puts everybody on one campus, but the gym wouldn't be expanded, the cafeteria wouldn't be expanded, you wouldn't have some of those. It would be somewhat crowded, but it would work. It would work, so that's why we included it.
I can go back to the last slide if you want, if that's helpful.
In option number 1, when you say status quo, maintenance only, does that include any capital at all? I mean, any new capital for
No,
the facility?
it doesn't include all the maintenance either. The status quo is only the maintenance the district currently expends on maintaining the buildings.
The district does not have a capital plan on an annual basis for improvements to the facility?
Well, part of the repair maintenance, some of it tends to, this past year, so in the fall, we installed, North Prairie has a need to replace all the boilers. Okay, and we replaced 2. So we still need 2 to go, and so that revenue that created the $105,000 on an annual basis is also capital. I mean, it's a combination of capital and the other maintenance piece.
From a budget perspective, what is your capital plan per year? I mean, you must have some type of maintenance capital plan in place every year, I would imagine.
It's based on need, and the other piece, it's also based on grant availability. And
because you must have a building fund, don't you? Dollars basically, it comes into the district. I mean, there's
we're
a portion
operation
of that.
and maintenance.
Okay.
So there's an operation and maintenance fund which would be included. That's where the revenue would come from in terms of any capital outlay that we would have for our facilities and buildings, with the exception, there's also a bond and interest fund, which is what paid for the construction of North Prairie. So that is kind of already expended. That's really not additional revenue coming in. It's just paying off our loan, if you will, on North Prairie. But in terms of our operation and maintenance, our budget is on average $105,000 that allows for both repair, maintenance, and some capital.
Okay.
Is there any consideration of, instead of building another elementary, for consolidations of the unit district, utilizing the other schools in the area?
We did not at this point look at consolidation with other districts, but that's one of the reasons why we are having this meeting. And to hear, is that something that should be considered?
Do I think it's?
No, I'm not just saying,
Yes,
you know.
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, if we're dropping enrollment, why build a new elementary school?
Well, we would agree. And we're not recommending, you know, I'll give you, at some point, we'll give you our personal recommendation on these. No, why would you build a new elementary school? It's going to go back up at some point, but right now, probably not. But this chart was meant to look at the factors that, the goals, and how can those goals best be met. And we feel, you can see from the bottom there, that the expansion in North Prairie in one form or another would meet most of the goals. But there are other ways to do it. And you know, what's important to our charge was to bring options to the board, to the community, say here's some options to consider. Here's the pluses and minuses, the pros and cons, and get some feedback as to the direction that the community would think would be the best to go, rather than just forcing a decision on the community.
So when you did the renovations cost on this, what percentage of cost overruns did you put into this? Say like whatever renovation you do on this building, you're gonna have the EPA here if there's something wrong. Did anybody take that into consideration?
These are conservative numbers? Are they gonna be, you're talking about EPA in terms of asbestos or something like that?
Right, so you run into some problem you don't foresee. Did you put any percentage of cost overruns into that?
There is a built-in 25% cost for everything,
Okay.
above and beyond the bricks and mortar, to pay the architect, to pay the soil engineer, to pay for surveying, to pay for contingency, put money aside for a contingency, as you're suggesting. And as Charlie alluded to a second ago, we purposely budgeted on the high side, because we thought the last thing we would want to do is say, whichever option you were to, the community was to route, I'll say it was number 3, to do a new gym, so that this could be a true cafeteria, multi-purpose room, put a more secure entrance to the building, and to do the one-to-one computing so that every child has access to a personal device, and at both schools. If you were to do that, we have a price tag of $5.6 million to do that. We purposely estimated high, just so that the community wasn't blindsided by something like that.
The plan is also, these options are also time-based. I mean, you can't do those types of additions next year. It wouldn't happen. So there is a cost that takes in escalation in materials and what they would cost. So there's those numbers in there. Any other questions before we kind of throw in a vote on it? You probably should have added none of the above.
Yeah.
We can put that in.
You know what? Just give me 1 second.
Could you also add consolidation as an option? I'm not sure that in any of the neighboring districts, elementary districts, that there's space, so to house 500 students or 600 students. I'm fairly certain there isn't enough space they have some room in some of their buildings. So if I were to try to predict, I would guess that at least one of our facilities would be necessary, even if it were a consolidated setting, that at least one of our buildings would be needed to house students, if that were one of the options considered.
I had a question before I voted. Since we don't have kids in the school district anymore, it would be helpful for me to know what do the teachers feel about it is best, what do the parents feel is best. Since I don't have any students in there, I mean, I know what I'd like, new and fresh, and I just, if I had all the cash, you'd go new and you'd have everything in one spot there, but what do the parents feel is best, what does teachers feel is best? It would help me to make my vote.
Well, it won't help you make your decision right this minute, but our goal is to, that's why we ask those questions up front. And we're going to go back and we're going to,
we'll find out
and we're going
parents feel.
to, right, and we're going to put this on the website and publicize it. And I know this is a bad time of year, the next 2 weeks, so sometime in through some point in January, encourage the community. We will put some additional background information, put these questions on the website, and encourage the community to respond. And then we can do exactly what your question is alluding to. Yes, sir.
I'm having trouble, understanding. You keep saying enrollment's going to go back up. And does your calculation consider like the droves of people that are likely to leave the state because of the bad economy, lack of jobs, and high taxes?
Well,
I mean, it may not come back. There's a chance, right?
it
Like
may
to
not come, well, the question is, did we consider the overall general Illinois economy, the regional economy, what effects that might have? Not really, to be honest. And the reason being, in our experience, we've been doing this for 52 years, and I personally have been doing this for 17 years. When I drive around this community, I see a lot of good homes, good family type homes. It's not a district that has a lot of apartments. So when I see the enrollment dropping and I look at the numbers behind that in terms of the number of women of childbearing age that live in the district, the declining, that I didn't consider, the declining birth rate, we did factor that in. When you look at all those things, that's what's causing the number to continue to go down. But because it has a good housing stock, good location,
Good schools.
and good schools, at some point, just like my own community, people are the empty nesters. I have a son who lives in Deerfield and one who lives in Denver, so we're finally, for the first time, empty nesters. You know, at some point, my wife and I are going to say, you know what, we don't need to maintain. I'm tired of mowing the grass. And somebody will buy that house, just as our neighbors have sold, and we now have a bunch of families with kids in there. You're going to have that again.
The other component too is the 2010 census showed that Illinois actually will grow in people, surprisingly enough. Predominantly not in Lake County, but the Lake County growth will occur at the K-8 level in terms of children of school-aged to go.
How much buildable land is around here for new homes?
Lots.
For Winthrop Harbor District?
Well, now you're asking to kind of the opposite of what this gentleman said. Now you're asking to you're suggesting to prognosticate about what will happen to the vacant land here.
But
you know,
do we have that much to annex?
You have, well, not annex, but within your district, within the boundaries of the district, there is still buildable land available. But it goes back to what this gentleman said. How much is the economy going to impact that? When we do a study in an area where there is large job growth, we do factor that in. And we often do factor in, if we know a factory is going out, if we know that a large area employer is leaving, we do factor that in. But here in this instance, the future isn't quite as crystal clear as it is.
There's no projected growth
for
Winthrop Harbor.
Not immediately. So you look at the other things. You look at the schools, the housing stock, the location. Do I think we'll ever get back? We don't have it up there. Do I think we'll ever get back to 817? My gut feeling is no. Will we get back up to 600, maybe even 700? Probably. Just from the number of homes that are available that exist in the district. But it's going to, as I said early on, it's not going to happen in the next 10 years. It's going to be 15, 20 years before you start to see that curve go up.
Do you have any charts that show the percentage of the tax increase for dollar value on homes? Did you run any charts for this? Okay.
Any other questions that I can show?
We've gone from having 3 schools when we had Spring Bluff consolidated and so on. And I've been here for, since the 70s, so I've seen the turning of homes from seniors that have gone to retirement or died or whatever, and then bought by startup families, as you say. The neighborhood that I live on College, the house next to me sold 6 times in the last 26 years. So the houses have sold quick because they're small, they're affordable, and for startup families, they're great. Based on your projections and what you've shown, and based on what we see in the economy in the region, I don't see any immediate growth spurts that are going to put us into overdrive and create a meltdown situation to where we can't house the students. We've done fine since Alton Harrison was here, and others have come and gone over the years. We've seen a lot of generations of kids get schooled out here. There's needs of improving on it, of course, as you can say, but you know, to get into something that will only go for the period of time until we're going to have this meeting again for who's still alive for the next era, you know, it might be to the best with what we're facing to shore this up and fix over there and then just tough it out until we see more. Because to be honest with you, until we breathe some life into this region economically and the state of Illinois wakes up and sees that we've got lakefront recreation and some other things happen here from economic development, you try coming to us with a bond referendum, you're going to have a war. You know, it's going to be, we're already taxed to the max now. We don't need any more taxes.
What kind of numbers did you run on the resale of this building?
We didn't do that. What we did do, we asked PMA. PMA is the district's financial advisor. And just, maybe somebody else wants to talk about this, but it's our understanding from talking to PMA and talking with the planning group that it's possible to raise about $6 million without raising taxes. And we do that by, there's debt coming off of the books, so it's renewing that debt. If that makes
it makes
sense to you. So you could raise some capital, improve the schools, and not add to the tax burden on the homeowners.
I still think you should have given some assessed value cost for the homeowners. And I still would have liked to have known what the value of this building is.
Well, we can certainly, you know, we haven't written the final report yet, so we can certainly look at some of that information and see if we can improve it.
The value of the asset you currently have in front of you is $6.5 million.
Of this building?
Of this building as it is, in the conditions that.
No, I'm talking if you sold it, you're talking about building a new addition onto North Prairie. What is the value of this building? It's going to be a mothballed, what?
That's a difficult question to answer because we're not.
No, it's not actually, because when North Prairie was built, I was on the school board. We ran numbers. There's another former board member here too. We did the homework on, at that time over at Spring Bluff, there were 10 pinned properties on where that school sat. We knew at that time when property had some value to it, the most we could have gotten out of it was about $45,000 a lot. It cost more for the asbestos removal than it was to tear the school down and sell the properties off for property at that time. So we left it alone. But at least we did the homework on it. We knew what the cost or what the value of that building is. I don't see nothing here tonight.
That's a good point. We should go back and look at what the value of
I
this
think
building
before you
is.
take votes on something like that and try and figure out what people are doing, I mean, they should know that we have no values of what our tax increase may or may not be. You're talking about PMA coming up with some numbers. Yeah, I'd like to know what my tax increase would be.
Learn to
Well, I
help.
think that answered it. I'll take a little exception to the last part of it. I think I have answered that, because we did ask PMA to look at what would the impact be on the taxpayers, and at what point would there be no increase to the taxpayers, and how much money could the district raise without having an increase. So we haven't answered.
How much is that though?
$6 million.
All right, but you have numbers up there that show 10 and 15 for
Right, and
the
we
school
also
pieces.
noted that that would require a significant bond issue.
Well, that's why I'm saying that now you got 4 million sitting there. So somebody's taxes are going to go up somewhere.
If that were the
Scenario.
scenario that was picked. And remember, what the input you give us tonight doesn't mean that that's going to be.
I'm just,
You know,
that's
that
what I
was
would
the
like-
purpose of this.
When I come back to another one, that's what I would like to say.
Sure. And you made an excellent point about the value of this building.
Private sector, who knows?
And it depends. in our experience, it depends on how you market it too. If you just put a for sale sign on the building, I will guarantee you will get less money than if you do an adaptive reuse study, find out is there an alternative use for this building, and market it to the developers that do that kind of a use. We've done that around the country, and you can get more money. That's why I'm hedging on that a little bit, because we really didn't talk about, what should be done with this building long term. We first wanted to see how would the community react if there was a suggestion that this building be closed. Obviously, there's some folks who feel, and a lot of people would, we don't want our taxes raised.
Lauren, do you know how we ended up with Spring Bluff in dollars and cents when it was sold?
I think they got about, what, $240,000?
$240,000.
Yeah, so I mean, it was almost balanced out of what it would have been.
It would have been? Okay. So it was a good deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you can assume, as far as the value of this building is concerned right now, I mean, we've touched on it. We've mentioned how the economic state of Illinois, about how we think that it's not going well, and people are leaving by the dozens. We do have buildable land that nobody's building on, so we can pretty much assume that the value of this building right now at this economic time is insignificant.
Not completely.
It's not really going to affect those numbers much. Especially considering what we got for Spring Bluff.
There's been more breakaways now from CEDAW. There's, I believe, another 4 districts that are breaking away. I mean, some of those options, we've done it at high school where we created those rooms. I mean, this is a structure that could almost suit needs like that. A lot of the people are fed up with the overrun costs of CEDAW right now.
CEDAW's also closing buildings too.
I know, but a lot of the schools are taking the loads back on themselves. So maybe those options should be looked at. Well, I mean, it's a combined effort between a couple different districts. You hear one person talking consolidation. I mean, you got 4 right here between feeders and the high school. This would be a pretty good thing for those type of needs for kids. If you're going to make it as a viable option to go out to North Prairie, it's an option that all 4 of the districts should look at.
Any other questions, comments, observations?
So if you were, Lauren, I guess I'm looking for a little more clarity. If you were looking at the options and the cost for each of the options, presenting the information in terms of each option and how much it would cost each taxpayer for their home or their $100 assessed value or what have you. So that piece of information along with the options would help you make a better decision.
Not me.
Well,
and I think in general, when we sold this thing originally 15 years ago, I mean, it was one of the big tools that was used to say, this is what you own this is what it's valued at, this is what your increase is going to be. From that point forward, we can't control the tax assessor, we know that. He can take your home up, take it down. I mean, EAV is going to be another hub on that too. So I think there should be some numbers at least tackled to the back of it for somebody to make a reasonable assumption of what their increase may or may not be. I mean,
I just wanted clarity in terms of understanding.
That's what we did years ago, even when you were working on this thing too. We gave out numbers for it.
Right.
At least somebody knew what they were going to
And
have.
I guess our thinking here was, what is it that if you were looking at it, what would you like to do? What do you think you'd like to do? Here's what so it's more in a preliminary stage than it is a definitive stage.
Well,
but
I mean, obviously,
we certainly can provide those kind of numbers. That wouldn't be hard to do.
No, I know. I mean, the big goal obviously was put the second structure back out there on the 17-acre property years back. Mm-hmm. You're talking about conjoining the building somehow. That was never part of it, but things change, so.
The advantage of doing that, joining the buildings, is you would have some shared spaces and you wouldn't replicate necessarily. That's why we have option 6 and option 7.
Yeah, but I want you to understand, I mean, I've lived up here a number of years now, invested in this community with my family. And one of the concerns is, seeing another plant go down here. I think this thing's worth more than 245,000, just like I thought Spring Bluff was, but that's all it brought in. Well, those are the questions I have. You know, I don't sit on this board, these people do, so, I mean, it's something that should be at least looked at, came up with the value. We did the study years back, had answers for people. I think I'm deserving of one myself here now.
Remind me, when we looked at that land, when we were looking at Spring Bluff, it was a little bit before everything kind of fell, and we had thought about selling off the lots, and we had some higher value, but that also included, and I think we took that into consideration, demolition of those buildings, and that kind of became a wash. We had projected numbers, but that didn't turn out to be what it...
The properties were averaging about 45,000 a year with sanitary and water, or per property piece. There were 10 pinned properties there that were from the old plot of surveys, and the asbestos abatement for that school was almost, well, yeah, it would have been a wash. You would have tore the thing down and you...
But when we ran the numbers to begin with, we were looking at, boy, if we cut these costs, we're
Well,
going to have this increased money, it's going to be...
But when we did redo Spring Bluff, we did complete encapsulation of asbestos for the kids. I mean, it was safe with the head count that was up at that time, and it worked.
That's what we needed to do.
Good input. Is there anybody else who has comments? Yes.
My understanding is just the purpose of this vote is to generate like a wish, idea, dream list. This is what we're going for, so to speak.
I think the intention of this vote is to get an opinion from the community to all of the things that have been stated, their tolerance for those numbers, what they want to accomplish. The gentleman in the back said, well, how much would we just normally spend on maintenance if we stayed status quo? What do we have enough to maintain what we're doing? I think it's to get a feel, a pulse from the community, and to work on how they can achieve that. None of the board has not made a decision on this at all.
Well, in that case, why don't you just give us your opinion? And we heard consolidation, we heard look at the value of this building. What is the impact on the taxpayers? Hopefully I sort of answered that. Anything $6 million or less would not result in a tax increase because it could be.
So basically 1, 3, and 4 conceptually would be no tax increase whatsoever. Any of the other options would require a tax increase, which...
We don't know about consolidation, however.
Right, because you haven't done any studies that is there room for
In most cases in the consolidation, you assume the higher district's rate. Both beach park design are higher than
our taxes would go up with consolidation.
And both districts have to vote on it, and both boards have to vote on it. And their market values of properties are lower as well. So.
And I think it's safe to assume, as Pat pointed out, as Ms. Goodwin pointed out, that you'd still have to keep one or both of your buildings depending on it, because none of them could take in the total population of the school. So they'd have to keep some of your building stock.
Did you guys consider your sample size for your input from the community? I mean, look at this turnout. Is there a better way to get a clearer sample on the community? I mean, this is no way to gauge.
That's why.
And it's one tool. It's not the only tool.
Yeah. I mean, what are the other tools?
Well, to put a similar presentation on the website and to give the public another opportunity to voice an opinion.
When's that coming?
In January. We'll get it up.
It has
in the next 2 weeks, nobody.
This can't be your sample size.
Between now and next week from today is Christmas Eve.
Yeah, so
nobody's going to really.
The voting here is almost useless. Because
Charlie
this is
said,
only
we're not
what percentage of the community is this?
Right, but we're not suggesting that this is.
Yeah.
This is representative.
I'm just saying, you gotta agree with me that this is nuts.
Well, that's always tough. I mean, we put it out on, voice message that I'm sure you all got, voice message and text message and all that. I absolutely understand. This is my problem when I say, hey, who wants to come volunteer at North Prairie? Everyone's busy, it's Christmas time, but this is our first step. So obviously we want to hear from as many people. That's why we encourage you all to tell your neighbors and get the word out, because you're right, we need more people to have an opinion. So I agree.
But from our standpoint,
If you have any ideas, let us know.
You mentioned taxes. Get a bigger turnout.
Do you have a question? I was just gonna say mostly what Kira just said, that there can be a lot more publicizing. I am majorly impressed with what was done for this meeting, and very disappointed at the turnout. I mean, to hear, I'm glad that everybody's here, but to hear the voice recordings that everybody gets, just the different flyers that went home, I'm impressed and thankful for that as a community member, but you can't force people to do it. So if you say we want a certain percentage of the community to have voted in order to move forward, fine, but we have to get those numbers, and people have to be willing to voice their opinion, and it's sad when they're not.
yes, but as Charlie was saying a minute ago, the advantage to us is that we get some suggestions were made, the things that we didn't, probably, maybe we should have, but our whole intent was to get some initial feedback. Put our heads together and say, okay, what did we hear? What should we include? How can this be better publicized? How can we refine this? Does it need to be refined? And come back after the first of the year with another, some additional information. Yes, sir.
I think years ago when we faced the referendum that, Mrs. Heine, what year was that? Do you remember when everything lit up over the referendum? Was that 95, 96? I forget, but you would know. When the forum went crazy.
About 7 years ago.
It was longer than that, wasn't it? I was still,
It was right before I got in school.
it was before I was assigned at the police department to the marina, so it had to be 15 years ago. At any rate, I've attempted to cover some things like at the school before in order to get the word out to shut-ins and people that couldn't see it, that could go to YouTube and Facebook and so on. And I think I'm friends with most of you guys, so through Facebook and social media, we ought to be able to get the word out to people on these issues. And I know Chris is here. Chris owns ZB Guide, which is a Zion Benton community website, which is available to everybody. And he co-ops with the school, the libraries, with the township supervisors and so on, to be like a portal, so to speak, a community portal. So if the school officials can get us the information, as you know, I do the little frames that are all over the place, and the TV sets are at the bank and so on. We can get the community educated and informed if you can tell us what we need to tell them. So we can help make a better decision and inform more people by collaborating. You see? That makes sense? I think it makes sense. So just share the information and we'll get it out. And I'll be happy to put these videos. These videos will be on YouTube and they'll be on ZB Guide. So, because a lot of people, like for the school board meetings before, they couldn't get out and make the meeting. Some people work second shift. So.
One question that might be helpful for us is, was what was presented understandable and in a reasonable format so that it didn't leave all these other questions in mind besides what was shared? Was the format that this was given to you understandable? And we've walked through it a couple times, so it is for us, but I want to make sure that it is. And that's one question that we would like to have at this level. That has nothing to do with the query that they're going to do, but did the information in the manner that it was presented make sense? Or can you at least feel informed by what was done? Not that you know what answer you want to do, but was it done in a reasonable format that people can grasp what you're saying? Is that a fair? That was one point for me to be at this meeting tonight. Is what we've been presented over the last, what we've worked on for the last time period. We've had time to process through it and understand it and understand what we're looking for. The first time that you've heard this, is it a tidbit? Is it knowledge? Was it presented in a manner that made sense? And if not, please let us know what kind of, that didn't make sense at all, I didn't get that at all. That's, I think, what we're looking for too. Because we want the public to be informed and be able to understand what's being said.
And things like Lauren mentioned about there's other information you'd like to see in the presentation. That's the kind of things, more than anything, that's what we're looking for. I mean, obviously, like she mentioned, we'd love to have a bigger turnout, but we don't have a bigger turnout, and we still have to get more people involved. But,
and we appreciate their opinions here,
exactly.
their insight as well.
I also think it's fair for all others that haven't voted, despite the 9 of you that did. Your opinion tonight isn't going to be the decision the board makes. They just want to know what you think. They just want to hear your voice. And that you're here, at least vote for us so we know what you think. And to your point, this isn't the representative sample of the community that we're taking to the bank. It's just a sample, and we want to know what you think. Right or wrong, we just need to know where you stand.
I think what would be helpful for me, since I don't usually go to things like this, if I got a piece of paper in the mail and it gave me the options and it said, which do you think is best? And then people can drop that off or mail it back in. It's just easiest. You look at your paper, you fill out your opinion, and you send it back in. And then maybe more people in the community would have 5 minutes to do that rather than come out, then see what options are available. So you might get a better input.
And these options that are here, the first 7, were arrived at by a group from the community with, Charlie was on there and a couple of board members. They're not all inclusive, and that's why we appreciate the comment about consolidation, and that's why we added that in there. And we want to get ideas of other things we could do. And that's part of the reason we started this whole process and invited people out here today. So these are not all inclusive. If someone has other ideas, we would like to hear about those.
Well, the other thing is that people really need to understand what the state of the buildings are. I mean, I work in both buildings and I didn't truly understand what the state of the buildings were. So I think like your idea is very good, to send out something to people to vote on, but if people don't have the information as far as what the state of the buildings are, I don't know that they can make a recommendation.
That's true, I'm clueless. My kids aren't in here anymore.
Right.
So that's why we value teachers and parents.
Right.
They're with it day to day.
And with teachers, I mean, like I work in the district and I live in this district, so, I'm a taxpayer here and not all of our teachers are, so I think, that obviously has an impact.
This is good when we started the conversation on these are your buildings. These are your assets. This is the community's building. And so to know what the community wants to do with them is very valuable. Whether the district and how they afford it and how they manage it, that's for these folks to decide, but at the end of the day, they need to know what you think. They need to know what you feel. And the right decision is the one that the group agrees to, that the group stands behind. Because to your point, you can't take anything to the community that they don't believe in, that they're not going to support.
And a little bit more background. When we first started this conversation, what was it, August? Our whole intent as a board of the district was to figure out what we needed to do in these buildings and to do everything we could without raising taxes. This isn't a sales pitch to get you to say it's okay if we go after raising our taxes. That's not what we're looking for. We don't want to raise your taxes. But now that all of these things have come up and we've seen all these options that have come up, we're just like, well, before we make that decision, why don't you tell us what you think too? I mean, we might have a good idea of what you think, but we don't know for sure. But the whole intent was never to come in here and give you a sales pitch that we want to raise your taxes, because that's not what this was intended to be from the very get-go. It was, what can we do without raising taxes? So I hope that clears things up a little bit. It is definitely not a sales pitch to say, please raise our taxes. We're not asking you to do that. We just want to know what you think the best options are from the department.
I got
Could I?
one more point. As a homeowner, and I know if I want to sell my home, I don't want it to go down in value because we have bad schools. And every time somebody talks about consolidation, that just makes me think my property is going to go down because we've got a very good school district here, and I want my property value to stay where it is. So, got to throw that out there. Sorry, husband, you shouldn't take me anywhere.
I wanted to bring up something. I didn't know whether to say. I used to work at the school district. I worked in maintenance. So did my father. I have seen so much. I have seen my father have saved this school district tons of money. The maintenance staff that we had did so much to improve these schools. Then about, in 2004, they got rid of the maintenance staff. They got rid of the maintenance staff, went with an outside contractor to save money. Now they're coming to us and saying, well, our buildings are falling apart. Our buildings are going to waste. Our buildings are, we need to know what can we do to fix these buildings. Well, if you want to know my opinion, my honest gut opinion, you should have kept your maintenance staff. You should have kept your maintenance. You should have worked with your maintenance staff.
We do have a maintenance staff, Paul. We contract out the janitorial services, but we do have a maintenance staff that are in-house maintenance staff.
Okay, then how come this was not mentioned to us? All we were told was your custodial staff. As far as I'm aware, because I don't know, as far as I'm aware, you had, when I left, you had one person for maintenance. One person.
We have two now.
And you have two.
Yep.
See, and I did not know that. But so you have two people for maintenance, where you used to have, which many of them lived in this community, cared about this community, has gone to these schools, have taken care of these schools, and like I said, one person, it saved money at this school by doing work themselves. Only paying for, have saved the school district tons of money. I don't get it. I don't know how you can just get rid of your maintenance, say, well, we're saving money, and now turn around and say, well, look what's happened to our buildings. How come our buildings are falling apart? Well, it doesn't take, your buildings are falling apart because you don't have your maintenance anymore.
A lot of the issues with the building, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the issues with the building are more age than they are lack of maintenance. It's right. Most of what we're doing is failing due to age. It's not that we haven't been performing maintenance on a lot of the items.
It's only a lifespan.
But you don't think, maintaining something, you have to maintain stuff in order for it to get better. If you have a vehicle, you're going to maintain it.
And we still do. We mentioned we spend $105,000 a year maintaining. We're spending money maintaining. It's not that we're not doing it anymore, Paul, just so you understand.
Yeah, if I gave the impression that we gave the impression that the buildings are falling apart, that's not true. I said everything has a lifespan, a life cycle, and that's why I said things could be deferred, because just because something has reached the end of its theoretical life cycle, doesn't mean, because it has been maintained, that you can't get some more years out of it. Which is why, when Charlie presented those assumptions, we said you could level load the maintenance. You don't have to address all of those maintenance needs. Maintenance and capital needs, to go back to what the gentleman in the back said, in one felt swoop. You don't have to do it all at once. You can defer some of that out for a period of time and continue to maintain your buildings in a warm, safe, and dry condition. Any last comments? Anybody else want to weigh in? We've got 17 people.
13, 14.
Again, you're giving us your opinion.
Yeah,
We
again,
heard, we really
we're not running this ballot
appreciate-
tomorrow, we just want to know what you think.
We heard some good things about things we should include, and we will go back and retool and make sure that some more information is available.
Thank you for expressing this. Thank you. Couple hold on, please. Within running? A little bit of everything. Everything except New Elementary. Nobody wants a New Elementary. So thank you for your opinions tonight. Thank you so much for coming out.
You go back.
Yes? Should go back up, should it go?
Could you read them off?
Let's go. There it is. The first, this 11% of status quo, 0% for New Elementary, 26% for limited improvements at Westfield and the one-to-one, 11% change in the grade configuration, 5% to total Westfield renovation, 26% for a North Prairie full addition, 5% North Prairie limited edition, 11% none of the above, and 5% consolidation.
Last comments? Said that about 10 times.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming
Thank you
out
for
tonight.
coming out. We appreciate it. Please leave us your clickers. They won't work on your remote at home.
First start the car from in here.
Start the car or
So
home
before we close up, is there any more stuff or just being at the floor open? If there's no other comments, we'll adjourn the meeting, but
Thank you.
if there's anything else, questions, anything?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Probably looking for a motion for adjournment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you.
How are you? Congratulations.